Welcome back, squirrel, to AvyHD, the podcast for people whose minds move a million miles a minute. My name is Avi. I am your host, and I am qualified to be your host because my mind moves a million miles a minute. We are glad to have you here and hope that you stick around and have some fun with us. Are you in the right place? Great question. If you can keep up with how fast I'm talking, probably. If not, you could just slow the speed down to about 75 and I should be fine for your listening pleasure. But for those of y'all who move at my pace, let's jump right into it because today we're doing something a little bit different. The last couple of weeks, y'all had a chance to meet me and hear a little bit about my story. And I got on last week with my very dear friend and colleague, Mirav, to talk more about ADHD and where it intersects in our lives, specifically with motherhood and with work. This week, like I said, we're doing something a little bit different. We're going to be reacting to some Reddit posts that we found talking about ADHD and about some of the common struggles. And I'm just going to be reacting to them organically. I haven't seen any of these yet, so this should be fun. If you are inspired by any of these questions to send something into us and talk about it, we love to hear from you. We'd love to have you on the show, possibly, to talk through some of the challenges that you're having. So without further ado, let's get into it. This is going to be sort of a rapid fire episode. I'm excited. We're moving at my pace today. So our first post here is from Bamzerk, and it was posted 6 months ago. So we have this post here from Bamzerk, and my team told me that they're going to be throwing it up on the screen for y'all to read along with me. But he's talking about the things that help and that hurt with ADHD and the strengths and weaknesses that he has and the struggles that they have with their ADHD. Although they aren't formally diagnosed yet, they're pretty sure what's going on with them. So they can jump from A to Z quickly. They can almost see into the future, identifying problems before they happen. That's just pattern recognition as a superpower. It's not really seeing into the future. It's not as scary as it seems. They're incredibly creative at problem solving in the real and digital world, and they can get on level with all kinds of people. They can interact with all types of people, and they're very funny. The things that hurt them, and this is where I really want to focus today. ADHD tax is a real thing. ADHD tax is a real freaking thing. It costs a fortune in tickets, fines for missed filing taxes, etc. They're messy and they keep things in piles. We all know this. Flick between various ways of organizing myself because they've never found the optimal way. I think that a lot of us struggle with this, and finding the system that works for you is really difficult. And then consistently implementing it is super difficult as well. Both of those things don't work great with ADHD. Get boring tasks done is almost impossible, like the taxes example that they gave above. They have such a dopamine addiction that they can get sucked into social media for hours, and the working day can spread across all waking hours because I take breaks in between and faff about. Oh my God. If I didn't have hard limits to my day, and by I didn't have hard limits, I mean, if my team didn't implement very strict limits for me when I can and cannot be working, or when I should and should not be working, my workday stretches on and on and on and on. Because the desire to take breaks in between is big, and then you can get sucked in a million different directions, right? You lose control of your time. It slips through your fingers like sand through an hourglass. These are the days of our lives. But we have some comments here from people who really can understand these struggles of staying organized. The number of people who have told me I'm so organized for my coping mechanisms. All the while, I'm barely keeping my head above water. And that, oh my God, that is a real one. Because for us people who have ADHD, as long as your coping mechanisms don't affect the people around you, it's all good. Once they start to realize or see the cracks in the coping mechanism, then it's all of a sudden like a really big deal, right? Like we have to struggle and suffer in silence and in a way that makes everyone else's life easier, but there's nobody who's trying to make our lives easier. You have to make your own life easier. And that's honestly just a reality of having any sort of anything that needs accommodation, be it ADHD or any other challenge that any person is going through in their entire life. No one cares. Like, no one's interested that it's hard. Everyone's going through stuff that is hard. And we need to figure out how to help ourselves and how to best accommodate ourselves. Ermagerd, it's Superman, says, everyone at work says I'm the most organized person ever, and they're jealous of my work notebook and plan. Wow, I have everything so together. They don't seem to realize that I write everything down because otherwise I'll forget within 15 minutes and nothing will get done. If you ask me what happened in this morning's meeting, I have genuinely no idea unless I check my notes. I'm not organized because I want to be. I'm organized because otherwise I'd be fired within 3 months. And that is so real. For at least for the ADHD half of my brain, like if I don't write it down, then it's gone. But the problem for me as somebody with ADHD and the unique challenge that brings is that I will remember in word for word detail what's happened in the meeting if I get the right cue or if I get the right prime. If you call me back to remembering what was in that meeting, I can remember it word for word. And yet it will slip out of my head if I don't grab onto it and if it's not written down. Not because I can't remember what happened, but because I can't access the information at the time it needs to happen, right? Like if I bring my attention back, the information is right there. I have it all word for word detail, but I didn't do anything about it. And when I talk about the duality of the autism half of the brain and the ADHD part of the brain and how they work against each other, this is one of those instances. Because if I could remember in word for word detail what happened and be able to follow through and implement on it, oh my God. Oh my God, that would be amazing. Literally, 70% answered replies said that literally, thankfully, it can be turned into a thing that's useful for others. Documentation, keeping calendars up to date, etc. I just roll with it now and accept the praise. And yeah, if you're getting praise in your work environment for that stuff, awesome. And if you've developed strong enough skills to be able to do that, that's amazing too. I never, ever developed those skills in school because I was just kind of smart enough to get by. And I didn't have to develop those strategies in an academic setting. So I never did it in elementary school. I never did it in high school. When I got to college, it was like way too freaking late to be able to develop these types of patterns. I was on the struggle bus all the way through. But if you don't have those strategies, you need to find ways to develop them. You need to be able to adopt strategies from other people, or you need to find the help that's going to be specifically and in a targeted way helpful to you and what you need to be able to get shit done at the end of the day. Yeah. Wow, this one, again, 70% asset coming in with the knowledge bombs. Absolutely. Even better if you throw in a coping mechanism without calling it a coping mechanism. Let me just write this down so I won't forget. Oh, cool, you're so organized. Yeah, organized. Work. It's not organization, it's a deficiency. I am no longer interested in what you are telling me right now. It will fall out of my brain like a goldfish if I don't write this thing down right now, if I don't concretize this in some way. And in my team, the way that we go about that is by recording and transcribing everything. If everything is recorded and transcribed, then I can come back to it at any time and be right back there. And then I remember everything that happened and I'm primed back to where I need to be. But it took me all of this time to get to a point where I'm able to record and transcribe everything. Normally, we can't do that in everyday life. And the majority of people don't just, and that's super duper frustrating and leads to all of this ADHD tax that he was talking about. You really need to accommodate yourself, again, like we were saying, to be able to avoid those very steep ADHD taxes. When we talk about ADHD tax, what are we even talking about? ADHD tax is terminology that's used to describe like a fine or a penalty that came from having ADHD. So, for example, I forget to check my mail. If I forget to check my mail, then I didn't see a notice that came in about a bill that I had to pay. If I didn't see the notice that came in about a bill, then I also probably missed the late notice. And maybe once I remember to check my actual mail, I've already received 4 late notices and it turned into a fine. That original forgetting consistently to check your mail turned into a fine, which we call ADHD tax. And that is tax that you have to pay if you don't have strict control over your ADHD, which can only be done with systems and processes that you surround yourself with. Another example of ADHD tax might be friendships that fall by the wayside, or people that you're no longer in contact with because you're not really great at keeping in touch, you're not really great at answering phone calls, and you're not really great at answering the phone when someone else calls, and maybe you answered that text message in your head, but you didn't actually answer it in real life, and it hurt your relationships. Those relationships, we could say, fell victim to ADHD tax. I have a little bit of a problem with the terminology because it's almost a cop-out. Oh, it's ADHD tax. It just like happens because I have ADHD. And that brings me back to what I was saying before. Like, no one cares. Your friends don't care that you're a bad friend because you have ADHD. Maybe they do. Maybe they really understand you. But ultimately, you have to show up in your friendships and you have to show up in your relationships so that people want to continue being in those friendships and in those relationships with you. So you need to find a way to fix whatever is going wrong so you don't consistently have the same problems over and over again. If you allow yourself to fall into the same patterns over and over and over again, and you don't have a trajectory of growth or of improvement, it's not acceptable. Like, that's not acceptable behavior. And I'm sorry to be the person who is telling you this, and maybe that's a little bit too harsh, but it's not acceptable to just let things go wrong over and over and over again and not do anything about it and not do anything to fix it. ADHD tax is real, and also no one cares. And I hear myself like you hear me, and I hear that sounds very harsh. What I mean by no one cares is everyone has their own stuff going on. Everyone's way more worried about their problems than they are about yours, as they should be. You should take care of yourself first. Your first and primary, most important responsibility is to yourself. But I'm also saying this from a place of extreme kindness and faith in your ability. Dear listener, you can do things on your own and for yourself. You have the strength, you have the capacity, you have the ability to find the solution that works for you. You have the right to advocate for yourself and make sure that people around you are aware of your boundaries. You have a right and a requirement to yourself to remove yourself from situations that overstep your boundaries. All of that is you doing that for you. And if people can step in and help along the way, that's amazing. And that is such a blessing and such a gift. But if they can't, you can. You can do that for yourself. You're probably still going to fall victim to ADHD tax once in a while, but only a little one. Only I forgot the muffins that I was supposed to bring for my kids' dance recital, so I had to go buy some on the way. A little one, not a big one. You can do that for yourself. And if you're not sure how, we can help you. That's what I'm here to do. And that is what is on my spirit, and that is what I'm being called to do, is to talk about and normalize all of these things. All of these neurodivergent challenges that we go through as ADHD, ADHD people, the challenges of the people who are overwhelmed and trying their best and feel like they're drowning and just think if they work a little bit harder, then maybe they'll be fine. And I'm here to give you the permission not to work a little bit harder. You don't need to work harder. You need to work smarter. You need to work better for yourself. You need to work in your way that serves you and your strengths. And we need to be a support system for each other.
Because if we develop a community of people who get it,
And we can all share our experiences and learn from each other and put together the best of what works and make sure that nobody is left in a place where they don't have resources and where they think that they're alone and that they're the only person who's going through this. And there probably isn't anyone else in the world who understands what's happening because it's so freaking weird. Your people exist. I'm assuming your people exist. That is going to conclude our quick podcast session for this week. Thank you to everybody who's been sending me feedback and letting me know that you're listening. I see you. I appreciate you. It means everything to me that you're here. If you have questions, comments, challenges that you want us to talk about, let us know. You can find us on all platforms at AvyHD, AvyHD, on YouTube or any of the platforms where podcasts are available. I am Avi. It's been a blessing to be here with you, and I will see you next week. Bye.